They said no woman could tame him. And that night I saw why. At the glittering banquet hall, chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 stars above polished marble floors. Guests in gowns and suits laughed over champagne, their voices dripping with wealth and pride. I crouched low, my hands raw from scrubbing wine stains near the edge of the hall, just another invisible cleaner nobody cared about. Until I heard her scream, "Mr. Liu, how can you humiliate me like this?" A wealthy socialite, dressed in a gown worth more than I would earn in 10 years, stood trembling before the most powerful man in the city. Liu Jianan, the CEO who ruled half the business empire in our country. Cold eyes, sharp jawline, every inch carved like stone. They called him the Ice King. And I saw it in the way he looked at her. No warmth. No hesitation. Just brutal dismissal. "I don't need a woman who clings like a parasite." His voice cut through the room like a blade, deep and merciless. "Get out." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some women covered their lips with manicured hands, whispering. Others smirked, secretly satisfied. Men exchanged glances, amused. The woman dropped to her knees, mascara streaking down her face. "Please, Janan. I love you." But he turned away, as if she was dirt beneath his shoes. My rag froze in my hand. I should have kept my head down, kept scrubbing. But my chest tightened with something sharp. Pity, anger, disgust. All these glittering people worshipped him, yet none dared speak. And then it happened. Under my breath, barely a whisper, I muttered, "Heartless monster." I thought no one would hear. But suddenly the hall went silent. I looked up, and those cold, piercing eyes were on me. Liu Jianan's gaze pinned me like a butterfly on a board. He had heard. The crowd turned, shocked. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Who was that? A cleaner? Is she insane? Talking back to him. Heat rushed to my cheeks. My hand shook as I gripped the rag tighter. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to bow, to beg forgiveness. But I didn't. I lifted my chin, though my heart pounded so loudly I feared it would explode, and met his eyes. For a long moment, the great Liu Jianan said nothing. His lips curved, not in a smile but in something darker. Intrigue. And then he stepped toward me, one slow step at a time. The crowd parted like waves before him, all eyes following, waiting for my doom. My breath caught. My knees nearly gave out. But I refused to kneel. His polished shoes stopped inches from my ragged sneakers. His shadow swallowed me whole. Then in a voice so low only I could hear, he asked, "Say that again." That night, under the glittering chandeliers, the man who rejected every woman in the city turned his gaze on me. And in that single terrifying moment I realized something. I had just become the only woman who dared challenge the Ice King. And I would pay for it. Or maybe I would change everything. The air in that glittering banquet hall turned heavy. Every whisper stopped. Every pair of eyes fixed on me, the nameless cleaner clutching a dirty rag. And the Ice King himself, Liu Jianan, stood before me. His gaze burned through my skin, sharper than any blade. "Say it again," he ordered, voice low, lethal. I swallowed hard. My knees shook, but I didn't bend. My father's words echoed in my ears. The poor have only one dignity left. Never bow to those who trample you. So I raised my trembling chin. My voice cracked, but the words came. "You're a heartless monster." Gasps erupted. The socialite who had been cast aside moments ago covered her mouth in shock. The guests erupted into muffled laughter, their expensive jewelry clinking as they leaned closer to watch. "She's insane. A cleaner talking back to him? She'll be ruined. He'll crush her like an ant." But Liu Jianan didn't explode. He studied me. Eyes narrowing, expression unreadable. The silence was worse than if he had shouted. Then suddenly he chuckled. A low, dangerous sound. "Interesting." He crouched down, his face inches from mine. His cologne dark, sharp, intoxicating, mixed with the faint scent of blood in my cracked hands. "What makes you think you're brave enough to insult me?" he asked, voice quiet, but the entire hall seemed to tremble with it. "I'm not brave," I whispered back, though my heart pounded like a drum. "I'm just not blind." His eyes flickered, a dangerous spark of surprise. No one ever contradicted him. No one dared. But before I could breathe, his fingers brushed my jaw, cold and firm. Do you know what happens to people who talk back to me? I stiffened but forced myself not to flinch. You destroy them. He smiled. It was not kind. It was the smile of a predator who had found something amusing. Exactly. Then, with deliberate cruelty, he straightened and turned to the crowd. Everyone remember her face. She's the first woman who dared call me a monster. Laughter and murmurs surged. Phones clicked. Whispers hissed around me. She'll be fired by morning. Maybe worse. He'll make an example of her. My cheeks burned. I wanted to melt into the marble floor. But I didn't run. I didn't beg. I stood there, rag clutched in my hands, humiliated but unbroken. And strangely, I felt his gaze still on me. Not of hatred alone, but something else. Something I couldn't understand. He walked away, his figure towering, regal, untouchable. Yet before leaving, he glanced back once, eyes locking with mine. In that fleeting second, I swore I saw a flicker of something human, a crack in the ice. But then it was gone. The hall erupted again into shallow laughter and gossip, but inside my chest was burning. I didn't know if I had just signed my own death warrant, or if I had awakened something far more dangerous. Later that night, when I returned to the staff quarters, the whispers followed me. Did you see her? She actually spoke against him. She'll regret it. My coworkers avoided me, fearful that even being near me would taint them. I sat alone on the creaking bunk bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, my ragged hands shaking. I should have been terrified. I should have prayed I wouldn't lose my job. But all I could feel was that moment. His eyes, that strange flicker, and the terrifying truth that maybe, for the first time in years, someone had finally seen me. That night, as the rain pounded on the tin roof above my tiny room, I whispered to myself, I may have nothing, but I won't bow. What I didn't know was that my defiance had already etched itself into the heart of the city's coldest man. And whether I liked it or not, I had just become his weakness. I thought the storm would pass, that he would forget me by morning. But I underestimated Lu Jianan. The next day the office was buzzing like a hive. His icy shadow stretched across the entire building, leaving everyone breathless, walking on glass. His assistants whispered about his temper, his sudden silences, the way he slammed doors harder than usual. And then they whispered about me. The girl from last night. Why hasn't she been fired yet? Maybe he's planning something worse. I tried to keep my head down, mop in hand, polishing the marble floors as if the night before had never happened. But every corner I turned I felt it, his eyes. Cold, sharp, unrelenting. Once, in the elevator lobby, I caught him watching me from the glass balcony above. He stood like a king surveying his territory, his gaze fixed on me alone. My knees buckled. I gripped the mop handle until my knuckles turned white. Why was he looking at me like that? That evening I was scrubbing the last hallway when heavy footsteps echoed behind me. My breath froze. Still working. His voice, smooth, deep, mocking, cut through the silence. I turned, heart hammering. There he was, immaculate in a tailored suit, the scent of expensive cologne trailing after him like smoke. Yes, Mr. Liu, I stammered, forcing my eyes to the floor. He walked closer, slow, deliberate. His shoes clicked against the tiles until he stopped right beside me. You work late. I have no choice, I muttered. He tilted his head, as if studying a puzzle. And yet you have a choice of words. Last night you used them recklessly. My throat tightened. I spoke the truth. He laughed, not kindly, but with that dangerous amusement that made my chest constrict. Truth. You think I've never been called a monster before? I glanced up. His eyes caught mine like chains. Maybe, but not to your face. The air between us thickened. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. And that's what makes you different. From that night, he began to appear everywhere. At the lobby while I was sweeping, In the parking garage when I took out the trash. At the staff cafeteria, his tall frame darkening the doorway while my tray rattled in my hands. It was as if the Ice King had decided to haunt me. Coincidence, I told myself. He doesn't care. He can't. But when his secretary delivered me an envelope with my name on it, I nearly dropped the mop. Inside was a note written in his sharp, slanted handwriting. The world fears me. Why don't you? My heart leapt into my throat. I crumpled the paper, shoved it into my pocket, and tried to ignore the way my hands trembled. Why me? Why couldn't he just leave me in peace? One evening, I found myself alone in the grand lobby, polishing the golden elevator doors. The building was nearly empty. The reflection on the door shifted. My blood turned cold. He was behind me. Slowly I turned. His gaze pinned me like a butterfly under glass. "Do you enjoy testing me?" he asked softly, stepping closer. I shook my head furiously. "No, sir." "Then why do I find myself thinking of you?" His voice carried a dangerous edge, but underneath I heard something raw, something almost human. I panicked. My voice came out harsher than I intended. "Maybe you're just bored. Maybe you're looking for another toy to break." Silence. For a terrifying second I thought he'd strike me down. But instead his lips curved into a chilling smile. "Perhaps," he murmured. "But what if this toy refuses to break?" He left me breathless, clutching the mop like a lifeline. That night, lying on my narrow bunk, I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I did, I saw him. His piercing gaze, his mocking smile, the way his words lingered like smoke in my lungs. I hated him. I feared him. And yet, why couldn't I stop remembering the flicker in his eyes? That moment where the monster looked almost wounded, almost lonely? I rolled over, covering my face with my hands. "This is madness," I whispered into the dark. But deep down I knew. The Ice King had found his weakness. And it was me. The next morning, whispers ran through the building before I even arrived. Something was different. The usually guarded CEO, Lu Jianan, had summoned every department head for a surprise meeting. The air was heavy, employees scurrying like ants, afraid of being caught out of place. And somehow, I was called in too. I stood at the far edge of the glittering boardroom, mop bucket awkwardly at my side, while the city's most powerful executives took their seats. My heart pounded so hard I thought the sound would echo against the walls of glass and steel. He walked in, cold, commanding, untouchable. Every head bowed, every spine stiffened. But not his eyes. His eyes found me instantly. A jolt of recognition burned through me. Why was I here? Why had he dragged a lowly cleaner into the lion's den? The meeting began. He spoke in clipped tones, dismantling strategies, exposing weaknesses, cutting through excuses with brutal precision. The room hung on every word, terrified to breathe too loudly. And then, without warning, his gaze flicked to me. "You." The world went silent. "Me." My voice cracked. "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, lips curling in faint amusement. "You spoke boldly to me before. Tell me." His eyes sharpened. "What do you think of this proposal?" Gasps rippled through the room. The CFO nearly dropped his pen. I froze. This wasn't real. This wasn't my world. I was just a maid with calloused hands and worn shoes. How could I answer? But his stare was merciless. A test. I swallowed hard. My palms slick with sweat. I forced words out of my trembling mouth. I think. I closed my eyes, then forced them open again, meeting his. It sounds impressive. But it feels cruel. It would cut jobs. Families would starve. You'd profit, but at what cost? A stunned silence. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, horrified. The CEO's lips twitched. Not with anger, but with something more dangerous. Amusement. "Interesting," he murmured. "Very interesting." After the meeting, I tried to slip away unnoticed. But of course he was waiting. In the empty corridor, he cornered me. His tall frame blocked the light, his shadow stretching over me like a dark crown. "Do you realize," he said softly, dangerously, "what you just did?" My throat went dry. I only spoke the truth. The truth, he repeated, stepping closer. Do you know what happens to people who embarrass me in front of my board? Fear crawled up my spine, but I clenched my fists. Then punish me. Fire me. Do whatever you want. I won't take back my words. For a long moment he simply stared at me. His eyes flickered with something unreadable, a storm barely contained. Then he smiled. A slow, dangerous smile that made my stomach twist. You pass, he whispered. For now. From that day the tests didn't stop. He made me deliver files to the top floor, knowing the staff would sneer at me for stepping into their world. He ordered me to serve tea during executive lunches, watching intently as I endured their disdain. He even made me walk into his office during negotiations, pretending I was merely cleaning, while his clients raised eyebrows at the audacity. And each time I stood straighter, hid my trembling hands, refused to bow. It was exhausting, terrifying. But beneath the ice, beneath the cruelty, I began to sense something else in him. A hunger, fascination, as if he wasn't testing me to break me, but to see if I could survive in his world. One night, as I scrubbed the marble stairs, he appeared again. No warning, no sound, just his presence looming, suffocating. You don't belong here, he said. I flinched, gripping the brush tighter. Then why do you keep dragging me into your games? Silence stretched. His eyes darkened, unreadable. Finally he said, because you're the only one who dares to fight me. My breath caught. His words weren't a threat. They sounded almost like a confession, and that scared me more than anything. Days blurred into nights, yet his presence never left me. Even when I thought I was alone, scrubbing the marble floors, carrying trash out back, folding towels in the silent staff quarters, I felt it. That weight, that invisible tether. Lu Jianan was everywhere. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in the subtle, suffocating way shadows cling to light. His gaze followed me in meetings. His voice lingered in my ears long after he spoke. His tests, his endless, merciless tests, twisted into something else I couldn't define. And against my will, my body responded. One afternoon, the building buzzed with rumors. A charity gala was being held at the CEO's private estate. Only the elite of the elite were invited. So why did I receive a summons? The head maid shoved a plain black dress into my arms. The CEO requested you specifically. Don't ask questions. Just show up. My chest tightened. Requested me? For what? To humiliate me in front of his glittering guests? But I had no choice. That night, I stood at the edges of the dazzling ballroom, the chandeliers raining golden light on gowns worth more than my entire life savings. Laughter tinkled, champagne glasses clinked, diamonds sparkled under silk gloves. And there I was, an outsider, a cleaner forced into borrowed clothes. When he entered, the room fell silent. Lu Jianan, in a tailored suit black as midnight, commanded every breath. Women leaned toward him like moths to flame. Men straightened nervously under his cool stare. But his eyes didn't wander. They found me instantly. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to melt into the floor. But he crossed the room without hesitation, ignoring the glittering heiresses reaching for his arm. He stopped in front of me. You're late, he said softly. I what? No, I came exactly when. Shua. His gaze dragged down my borrowed dress, then back up to my face. You'll do. And before I could protest, he took my hand. Gasps erupted behind us as he led me into the center of the ballroom. Music swelled, a haunting waltz, and suddenly his arm was at my waist, his hand clasping mine, pulling me into his world where every eye burned holes into my skin. I don't know how to dance. I hissed, panicked. Then follow me, he murmured, his lips dangerously close to my ear. And so I did. Step by step, his body guided mine. My heart thundered, my breath caught, and though fear coiled in my chest, something else slipped in too. A heat I didn't want to name. When the song ended, he didn't let go. Instead, he leaned closer, his breath brushing against my skin. Do you understand now? Understand what? I whispered. His eyes pierced into me, colder than ice yet blazing with something unspoken. That you belong to me. I froze. The words tangled in my chest. Belong? No. I didn't belong to anyone. But the way his fingers tightened around mine, the way his stare seared into my very soul, part of me trembled because I feared it might already be true. The following days the tension only grew. He started appearing in the simplest of places. At the pantry when I fetched water, at the stairwell when I carried supplies, at the courtyard where I thought I was alone. Always watching. Always close enough to remind me he could claim my heir if he wanted to. And the staff noticed. Whispers spread like wildfire. Why her? Why does the CEO look at a cleaner that way? Their sneers cut deeper than knives, but strangely his presence shielded me. When one assistant sneered too loudly, Lu Jianan silenced him with a single glance that could freeze blood. That night, as I wiped down the glass doors, he appeared again. Alone. No boardroom, no witnesses, no glittering crowd. Just him. You make me restless, he said simply. My heart tripped. What do you mean? I don't know why I tolerate your defiance. Why I crave it. His jaw tightened, his voice low, dangerous. Every other woman kneels. But you? You fight. And I? He broke off, eyes burning, fists clenched as if fighting some invisible war inside himself. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. And you what? His hand lifted, hesitant, trembling slightly, as if to touch my face. But at the last second he pulled back, his expression twisting. You're my weakness, he said. The words left me breathless. Weakness? For a man like him, that was the deadliest confession of all. And in that moment I realized, this game between us was no longer just a test of will. It was a dangerous dance neither of us could stop. It was late, the city wrapped in neon haze when everything crumbled. I had just finished wiping down the grand staircase when whispers drifted to me from the open boardroom door. Two executives lingered inside, speaking in hushed tones, unaware I was nearby. Pathetic, isn't it? One sneered. Our mighty CEO. Reduced to sneaking around with a cleaner. Not just that, the other replied, voice dripping with contempt. Rumor is she's only using him. Her family's drowning in debt. What better way to climb than betting the most powerful man in the city? Their laughter was sharp, ugly. My blood ran cold. Debt? Using him? They twisted my existence into poison I never planted. Before I could retreat, a shadow fell over the doorway. Lu Jianan stood there, silent, unreadable. His eyes flicked from them to me, and in that moment I knew he had heard it all. Is it true? He asked later, his voice low and dangerous, the storm I had feared finally breaking. I shook my head furiously. No, I would never. Then why? He cut in, stepping closer. Do these stories follow you everywhere? Why does every look, every word I hear about you, drip with scheming intent? Because they don't understand me. My voice cracked, my chest heaving. I'm not like the women who orbit you, waiting for scraps of your power. I never asked for any of this. His eyes narrowed. And yet you stayed. The accusation sliced me open. What do you mean stayed? Where could I go? You trapped me in your world. I bit my lip, but it was too late. The words had escaped. His expression shifted, icy walls snapping back into place. Trapped you, he repeated, each syllable heavy. So that's what I am to you. A prison. I wanted to scream. To tell him no, that wasn't it. That somewhere along the way my heart had betrayed me and tied itself to his. But pride, my stubborn, wounded pride, held me back. So I stayed silent. And he stepped away. The following days were agony. He avoided me. His once burning gaze now a glacier. The staff noticed immediately. See? The CEO grew bored. It was only a matter of time. Their whispers clawed at me, confirming the fear already eating me alive. But the worst wound came one evening at another glittering party. He arrived with a woman on his arm, one of those perfect, elegant socialites, her laughter high and false, her diamonds catching the light like cruel stars. And me? I stood at the edge of the hall, forced to serve champagne, my uniform marking me as invisible. But I wasn't invisible. I was suffocating, as he made sure I saw. His hand at the woman's waist. His lips brushing her cheek. His voice low in her ear, words I once thought he reserved only for me. I couldn't breathe. When our eyes finally met across the room, his were merciless, cold, final. And in that instant I understood, this was punishment. Not for what I'd done because I had done nothing, but for what he believed I could do. For daring to matter enough to wound him. Later, when the night grew thin and the halls emptied, he found me in the garden, my hands trembling as I clutched the tray of glasses. "Why are you still here?" His voice was sharp, but underneath I caught something worse. Something raw. Because? My throat closed, my pride screaming at me not to beg. Because I have nowhere else to go. His jaw clenched. "Then maybe you should find somewhere. Before I decide to throw you out myself." The words shattered me, but I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Then do it. Prove to yourself I was never anything more than a distraction." His silence burned deeper than any scream could, and when he finally turned his back and walked away, I knew this was the breaking point. The fragile thread between us had snapped. I had built walls around my heart strong and high because men like him were dangerous. Men with power. Men with money. Men who could crush someone like me with a single word. And yet that night I saw him break. It was late. The office had long gone silent, the marble hallways echoing only with the faint hum of the city outside. I had stayed behind to clean, quietly moving from desk to desk, my mop gliding across the polished floor. I thought he had already left. He always left last, but even CEOs needed sleep, didn't they? But when I pushed open the glass doors to his office, I froze. The man who ruled entire boardrooms, who silenced rivals with a single glare, was sitting there in the dark, his head buried in his hands. Papers scattered across his desk, contracts torn in half. His shoulders trembled, just barely but enough for me to see. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. This couldn't be him. Not the CEO who rejected every woman, who dismissed me with cold words, who acted as though emotions were beneath him. He looked human. I wanted to leave to give him his privacy, but the creak of the mop bucket betrayed me. His head lifted slowly, and in the shadows I saw something I never expected. His eyes red-rimmed as if he had been holding back tears. "I told you to stay out," he said, his voice low, hoarse, broken. Not the voice of power I was used to. For once he wasn't commanding. He wasn't in control. He was pleading. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the mop handle. "You look like you need someone to stay," I whispered before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was unbearable. I thought he would lash out, throw me out, remind me of my place. But instead he laughed softly, an empty, bitter laugh. "You think I need someone," he muttered. "I've spent my whole life making sure I never did." His words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't know his past. I didn't know why he rejected everyone, why he hid behind walls of arrogance and power. But in that moment I saw a truth he never let anyone else see. He was alone. Terribly, achingly alone. I stepped closer, hesitantly. He didn't push me away. "Even the strongest people need someone sometimes," I said softly. His gaze locked on mine, sharp and desperate, as though searching for a lie. But I held it. I didn't flinch. That was when something shifted between us. The cold CEO, the man who mocked me, tested me, toyed with me, let down his armor for the first time. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "My mother died because of the company," he whispered, almost to himself. "My father, he destroyed her. And I swore I'd never let a woman close enough to ruin me too." The confession hung in the air, heavy and fragile. My chest ached as I listened. His cruelty, his distance, his cold rejections, it wasn't just arrogance. It was protection. A shield against the pain he had carried for years. I should have walked away. I should have reminded myself he was still the CEO and I was still just the cleaner. But I couldn't. Not when I saw the little boy inside the powerful man who had been broken long before I met him. Without thinking, I reached out and placed a hand gently over his. His hand twitched as if used to warmth and used to comfort. But he didn't pull away. Instead, his lips parted, and in a voice barely above a whisper he said, "Why do you stay? Why don't you run like everyone else?" I didn't know how to answer. Maybe because, for once, I saw someone who wasn't untouchable. Maybe because my own loneliness recognized his. Maybe because, despite every warning bell in my heart, I couldn't help but care. So I told him the truth. Because I don't see a CEO right now. I just see a man who's hurting. His eyes softened in a way I had never seen before. Vulnerable. Exposed. Dangerous. Because in that moment he wasn't rejecting me anymore. He was inviting me closer. And that terrified me more than his cruelty ever had. I pulled back quickly, my heart racing. If I stayed longer, I might fall into something I couldn't escape. He must have sensed it too, because his hand tightened briefly on mine before letting go, almost reluctantly. "Go," he said, his voice steadier now though still soft. "Before I make the mistake of keeping you here." It was the closest thing to a confession I had ever heard from him. I walked out, my chest tight, my thoughts in chaos. He wasn't supposed to have weaknesses. He wasn't supposed to let me in. But he had. And now I couldn't pretend I didn't care. That night, as I lay awake, I realized the most dangerous thing of all had happened. The CEO who swore he would never need anyone had shown me his weakness. And that weakness was me. My name is Lina, 23 years old, and until recently I was invisible. Just another cleaner sweeping marble floors in a skyscraper that never cared to know my name. Yet somehow, against every rule of logic, I had become the only woman who dared to speak back to Zhao Chen, the most powerful CEO in the city, and unbelievably the only woman he seemed unable to reject. But with power comes enemies, and the fragile, dangerous thread between us was about to be tested like never before. The rumors had started quietly, like a snake slithering through the grass. A few gossiping secretaries, a smirk here, a whisper there. The CEO is being bewitched by a maid. By the end of the week, the whispers had turned into a full-blown scandal. Photos appeared online, blurry, stolen shots of me entering his office late at night, or walking side by side with him in the underground garage. The captions were cruel. "Gold-digging cleaner seduces CEO. From mop to mistress, how low can our standards fall?" My phone buzzed endlessly with anonymous texts. "Slut. Trash. You'll never be worthy." I tried to ignore it, burying myself in work, but soon the trap tightened. One morning as I was scrubbing the lobby floor, a group of executives passed by, their laughter sharp as knives. "Careful, don't slip," one of them sneered. "The CEO's pet might cry." Heat burned my face, but before I could reply, I felt a presence beside me. Zhao Chen himself stood there, tall, commanding, his dark eyes colder than ice. The executives froze, their smirks vanishing. "Repeat that," he said in a voice so low it was deadly. No one dared. They scattered like cowards, leaving me kneeling on the floor with the mop still dripping water. For a heartbeat, his gaze softened as it landed on me. Concern flickered there, almost hidden. But then he turned sharply, striding into the elevator without another word. He had protected me, but also left me to drown in the shame. That night, I found an envelope slipped into my locker. Inside was a stack of printed photos, dozens of them, me and Zhao Chen, caught in moments I hadn't even realized anyone had been watching. A note was scrawled across the top. "Leave him or we'll destroy you both." My heart pounded. Who? Why? Was it jealous women? A rival company? Or perhaps one of the many board members who despised the idea that the untouchable CEO might fall for a nobody? The trap was tightening. Days later, the attack came full force. A tabloid published a front-page story claiming I was blackmailing Zhao Chen into a relationship, threatening to leak intimate secrets if he didn't keep me by his side. The building buzzed with poisonous energy. Every glance burned like acid. Colleagues avoided me or worse, openly mocked me. When I finally gathered the courage to confront him, storming into his office with the magazine in hand, he didn't even look up from his paperwork. "Is it true?" I demanded, my voice shaking. Is what true? His tone was cutting, dismissive like a whip. That I'm using you. That I'm... My throat closed. Why aren't you denying this? Why aren't you protecting me? Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were unreadable, sharp as glass. Because sometimes, he said, silence is the strongest weapon. The more we react, the more power they have. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that he had some plan. But the silence was killing me. That evening, as I left work, a group of women blocked my way in the parking lot. They were well-dressed, clearly wives or daughters of wealthy families. One of them, a tall, elegant woman with red lips, stepped forward and slapped me so hard my vision blurred. Stay away from Zhao Chen, she spat. He belongs to people of our world, not trash like you. They shoved me against a car, ripping the strap of my bag, scattering its contents across the ground. I fought to hold back tears, clutching the broken pieces of my dignity. And then headlights flooded the lot. His black car screeched to a halt. Zhao Chen stepped out, his face a mask of rage. What do you think you're doing? His voice cracked like thunder. The women froze, their bravado crumbling. The red-lipped one stammered. Chen, we were only... Get out of my sight, he roared. They fled like frightened deer. He turned to me, his jaw tight. Why didn't you call me? The words burst out before I could stop them. Because I don't know if I can call you. I don't know if you even want me here. Or if I'm just some distraction until you get bored. The silence that followed was unbearable. His eyes softened for a fleeting second, but then he looked away, his fists clenching. You think too much, he muttered. Go home. And just like that, he left me standing in the shadows, protected yet abandoned all over again. That night as I lay awake, the truth hit me like a knife. This wasn't just gossip or jealousy anymore. Someone wanted me gone. Someone powerful enough to manipulate the media, the board, even society itself. And I was caught in the middle of a dangerous game where my heart, and maybe even my life, was the ultimate pawn. But one thing was certain. If they thought I would break easily, they didn't know me at all. But the truth has a way of clawing its way out of the shadows. And tonight, the mask finally began to crack. It started with a board meeting. I wasn't supposed to be there, of course not, but fate has a twisted sense of humor. I had been assigned to clean the executive floor, and as I was polishing the glass outside the conference room, the raised voices carried through. This is unacceptable, Zhao Chen, an older man barked. Your association with that girl is dragging our reputation through the gutter. Investors are panicking. The media is circling like vultures. If you don't sever ties, we will force a vote to remove you. Silence. Then his voice, calm, cold, controlled. And who, Zhao Chen asked, leaked fabricated photos to the press? Who fed lies to tabloids about blackmail? The room shifted. Nervous coughs, shuffling papers. You dare accuse us? I don't accuse, Zhao Chen interrupted sharply. I know. My heart stopped. That night the trap was sprung. He called a press conference, one so sudden that the entire city buzzed with anticipation. I stood hidden in the back, pressed against the wall, trembling. My face was already plastered across gossip magazines. The last thing I wanted was more attention. But some part of me needed to see how he would handle it, if he would finally throw me to the wolves to save himself. The cameras flashed as he stepped onto the stage. Flawless in a black suit, every inch the untouchable CEO. The room quieted instantly. Recently, he began, his voice steady, there have been malicious rumors about myself and a woman who works in this very building. Lies about blackmail, scandal, and shame. My knees weakened. Here it was, the moment. He would deny me, erase me. But then his eyes swept the room, fierce as fire. The truth, he said, is that she is the only woman who has never wanted anything from me. She is the only one who dares to tell me the truth, no matter how much it stings. And for that reason, she is the only one I cannot reject. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My breath caught in my throat. This smear campaign, he continued, was orchestrated by those threatened by me. By those who think status is more important than integrity. But I tell you this. I will not sacrifice her to appease anyone's pride. If protecting her costs me everything, then so be it. The room erupted into chaos, reporters shouting, cameras flashing. But his words drowned it all out. My heart thundered in my chest. He had just burned every bridge of denial. He had chosen me. But the battle wasn't over. The very next day, evidence surfaced. Zhao Chen revealed it in a board meeting. Bank transfers, emails, staged photographs, all traced back to a single hand. The elegant woman with red lips. The same one who had cornered me in the parking lot. She wasn't just a jealous socialite. She was the daughter of one of the board's most powerful men. And she had orchestrated everything, every rumor, every attack, to ruin me and weaken Zhao Chen. The exposure was brutal. Reporters swarmed, the scandal flipped upside down, and suddenly the narrative shifted. No longer was I the scheming maid. I was the target of a calculated smear campaign. But even as the truth spread, I wasn't relieved. Because truth is never enough on its own. In this world of wealth and power, those exposed don't quietly disappear. They strike back harder. That evening, Zhao Chen found me sitting on the rooftop of the building, hugging my knees, staring at the city lights. "Why did you do it?" I whispered as he approached. "Why put yourself at risk like that? You could have denied me, erased me, and everything would have been fine." He stood beside me, silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "Because for the first time in my life, I don't want fine. I want something real." I turned to him, and in that moment, all the walls he had built around himself seemed to falter. His hand reached out, brushing against mine, hesitant, almost vulnerable. But before I could reply, his phone buzzed. He answered, and his face darkened instantly. "They've made their move," he muttered. My stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" "They're not done. Exposing the truth wasn't enough. Now they'll come after you directly. They'll try to break you in ways I can't predict." His words chilled me. The trap had been exposed, but that only meant the real war was beginning. That night, lying awake, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just a target because of him anymore. I was a weakness, his weakness. The one chink in the armor of an otherwise untouchable man. And in this world, weaknesses weren't forgiven. They were hunted. If I stayed, I would be dragged into battles I couldn't win. But if I left, my heart twisted. I didn't know what terrified me more, losing myself in his dangerous world, or losing him altogether. The threats came swiftly. Anonymous calls. Shadows trailing me through the streets. Strange letters slipped under my door. Each one colder, sharper than the last. "Leave him or we will destroy you." I wanted to be brave. I wanted to stand tall like the woman he believed I was. But every night fear gnawed at me. Every sound outside my window made me jump. And worst of all, I feared not for myself, but for him. Because I was his weakness. And his enemies knew it. One evening, Zhao Chen called me into his office. His eyes, usually sharp as ice, were heavy with something I'd never seen before. Helplessness. "They're going after you," he said. "I can handle attacks on me, but if anything happens to you..." He broke off, fists clenching at his sides. My heart pounded. "So what do we do?" For the first time, he hesitated. The man who commanded boardrooms and empire stood before me like a man stripped bare. "I could send you away," he said slowly. "Far from here. Somewhere safe. But if you stay, it won't just be danger. It will be war." I lifted my chin, even as my hands trembled. "If you send me away, then they win. They'll always win because they'll know they can control you through me. And..." My throat tightened. "And I don't want to leave you." Silence. Then he reached across the desk, gripping my hand, his voice breaking just slightly. "You're the only thing in my life I don't want to lose." The final confrontation came faster than either of us expected. The rival board member and his daughter, the ones who orchestrated the lies, summoned Zhao Chen to a private settlement. I didn't want to go, but something inside me told me this was it. That the trap wasn't just for him but for us. The warehouse was dark, empty except for the echo of our footsteps. And then they emerged, smirking like hunters. You should have listened, Zhao Chen, the older man sneered. You could have kept your empire if you'd cut off this little maid. But now, she'll be the reason you lose everything. Two men stepped forward, grabbing my arms. I struggled, panic flaring. Zhao Chen's face hardened with fury. Touch her again, he said, voice deadly low, and I'll end you. They laughed. You? Without her, you're unstoppable. With her, you're pathetic. We'll make sure she disappears. And so will your weakness. My blood ran cold. For the first time I saw it clearly. They didn't just want power. They wanted to destroy him by destroying me. But they underestimated us. Because instead of breaking, I found my voice. Do you know what makes me different from you? I shouted. You think love is weakness. But love is the only reason he's stronger than all of you. The room stilled. Even Zhao Chen froze, staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. And then chaos. Security forces burst through the doors. His loyal men, who had been tracing the threats for days. The rival board members' smirk vanished as they were dragged away. Their power crumbling in an instant. Zhao Chen strode toward me, his hand trembling as it brushed my face. For the first time, his cold mask shattered completely. You, his voice was rough. You risked everything for me. Tears burned my eyes. So did you. And then in that wrecked warehouse with the dust and fear still clinging to us, he pulled me into his arms, not as a possession, not as a savior, but as a man who had finally found the one thing he swore he would never need. The weeks after were different. The gossip died. The enemies fell silent. The city whispered about the CEO who had once rejected every woman, but now protected one with a fierceness that shook his empire. But none of that mattered to me. What mattered was the way he looked at me now, not like a weakness but like the only strength that mattered. One evening, as the sun sank over the city, he took me to the rooftop of his building. The wind carried the scent of rain, and the sky burned gold. I used to think love was dangerous, he admitted, his arm tight around my waist. That it would make me vulnerable. But with you, I've realized love doesn't make me weak. It makes me human. And for the first time I want to be human. My chest ached with warmth. And for the first time, I believe I deserve to be loved. He kissed me then, slow and certain, sealing the promise we had both nearly lost in the storm. So here I am, Lina, the girl who once scrubbed floors invisible to the world. Now the woman who taught a powerful CEO that even the coldest heart can burn. And this time I know the truth. Love isn't the end of strength. It's the beginning of it.